Hello CVTV land, welcome to Tammy's Kitchen. We're back here in the kitchen and we're going to cook up a home style supper for you today. We're going to start out with an old-fashioned favorite of meatloaf. So in my bowl here I'm going to start with 2 eggs and a half a cup of cracker crumbs, and that was about 10 crackers or so. 1/4 of a cup of chopped onion. This recipe calls for green peppers, and I don't care for those particularly, so they're not going in this recipe, but if you like them, you can add them to yours. And an 8-ounce can of tomato sauce. A tablespoon of brown sugar. I'm going to put in just a dash or so of Worcestershire. And a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to mix that up. And then I'm going to add 1.5 pounds of ground beef. Meatloaf's one of those stick to your ribs kind of meals, and I love it with mashed potatoes and gravy. So that's what we're gonna fix here today. Just kind of remind you, going to grandma's house or going home to mom's for supper on Sunday night. So. Those old-time cooks, they didn't use a recipe for meatloaf. Sometimes it was just kind of what they had on hand and they stuck it in there. So, you know, as you've heard me say, I'm a little bit particular about my food. So I kind of stay with the tried and true here of just the onions and the basics here. So. Okay, so if you get this all combined, be sure that you've got your hamburger broken up here pretty well and everything's all incorporated. So now, I have an actual meatloaf pan. I got this for Christmas a few years ago, and it's just the handy dandiest little thing here. So when your meatloaf's done, you just pull this out of the pan and it holds it together. It's really nifty. I like it. But I have sprayed that with a little bit of cooking spray just so it doesn't stick. And just dump it in. Want to flatten that out to make it level in your pan. Okay, for the topping on our meatloaf, I've got a half a cup of ketchup, a little tongue-tied there, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar, and we're going to add in a tablespoon of mustard. If I can get that much squeezed out of the bottle. Stir that up. I've combined a couple of recipes here and kind of added and subtracted to my own liking. This meatloaf recipe is out of the Old Better Homes and Gardens cookbook. And this topping is from Paula Deen's meatloaf recipe. So that's a nice thing about it. You can just kind of add and subtract the things that you and your family like and adapt it to how you want it to taste. So, but this topping gives it a little bit of a sweetness and a little tanginess that's really good. So, okay, this is going to go into a 350-degree oven for about 1 hour and 15 minutes. It does take quite a while for this to cook, so you've got plenty of time to get the rest of your meal together. We've got our meatloaf baking in the oven, and it sure is smelling good. So we're going to do our next recipe here with dessert, and we're going to make some old-fashioned no-bake cookies. So I've got 1/4 cup of butter in my pan. So we'll get that melting. Okay, to that, that's getting close to being all melted. To that, we're going to add 2 cups of white sugar. And 3 tablespoons of cocoa. Butter, sugar, and cocoa. It just can't be bad. And then we're going to add 1/2 cup of milk. We need to cook this until it comes to a boil, and then we're going to boil it for about a minute. And you take it off the heat and we'll add the rest of our ingredients. This is such a simple recipe, you know, you can stir this up in 10 minutes or so. The thing that takes the longest is getting it to come to a boil, so you can throw this together in no time. Okay, we've let our mixture boil for 1 minute, so we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. So we've got 1/2 cup of peanut butter. Teaspoon of vanilla. Obviously I didn't measure that, I just poured some in, it'll be fine. And this is 3 cups of quick cooking oats. You do want to use the quick cooking variety, and the biggest difference is the size of the oats. If you get the other kind, they're much bigger, and they don't work as well in these cookies. So you want the finer ones. And the other great thing about this recipe is you only dirty up 1 pan. Before these get set up too much, scoop them out really quickly onto some wax paper. They will start to set up pretty fast. Once the butter in there starts to cool off, you know, they get thick in a hurry. Okay, we're back at the stove, and I have peeled 6 large white potatoes, and I've got them in our pan here covered with water. And I'm just going to add a little salt. Potatoes take a lot of salt, so that's why I didn't bother measuring it. They'll be fine. And I'm going to turn this on high heat, and of course it'll take several minutes to cook the potatoes through, and then we'll mash them and make some gravy for our meatloaf. Okay, our meatloaf is out of the oven and it's looking and smelling pretty tasty. Our potatoes are starting to boil, and so we're going to make some gravy now to go on top of those. So hold on just a minute, I'll get my ingredients and we'll be back at the stove. Okay, we're going to start our gravy, and I've got a little bit of butter in my pan again to start with, and I'm going to add a little bit of finely chopped onion and just saute that up a little bit, just to get the onion tender. Well, that meatloaf sure does smell good. I just had lunch, but I think I may be ready to eat again in a little bit. Now I'm going to add 1/4 cup of flour. Just kind of make a roux with that. It's going to make kind of a paste. And I'm going to let that cook a few minutes just to get the flour taste out of that. Keep stirring so that the bottom of that doesn't scorch. Okay, and then we're going to add some beef broth. Okay, I think our gravy is finished here. It's thickened up pretty nicely, so we will just leave that on the stove and wait for our potatoes to get done so that we can mash them. Okay, I've got our potatoes off the stove and they're draining in a colander in the sink. And to make our mashed potatoes, I'm going to melt about a half a stick of butter. If you warm up your butter and your milk before you dump them in the mashed potatoes, your potatoes won't get quite as cold. So I'll melt this on the stove and we'll start whipping those with the mixer. Okay, we've got our potatoes here in a bowl with my mixer, and to them I have added some seasoning salt. This is Paula Deen's house seasoning, which is just salt and pepper and garlic powder. I like it just because it gives the potatoes a little bit of a garlicky flavor. So that makes it taste good to me. So salt and pepper is fine if you don't care for the garlic portion of it. Got my butter on the stove. So I'm going to dump that in, and just in the same pan I'm going to add some milk and warm it up. Don't usually use a recipe to make mashed potatoes. I just kind of go by sight. I do like my mashed potatoes to be very creamy, so I just kind of add enough milk until I get them to the consistency that I want them to be. Hold your ears, my mixer is noisy. Okay, you almost don't need any milk. Those just speed up really creamy as they were, but I'm going to warm that milk up a little bit and add that because as they set, they'll get thicker too, and I don't like the gloppy ones. I want them to be smooth and creamy, so. Okay, I've got some warm milk here, so I'm going to add that to our potatoes. Oh yeah, those smell really good. Could eat those with my finger, but I won't. We'll be right back to close out the show and fix you a plate of our homemade meatloaf and mashed potatoes. Okay, we're going to take our meatloaf out, and I just broke off the sides here with a knife so that it wouldn't stick whenever I lifted this out. But you can see it just comes out in a perfect little meatloaf. I'll just put it on this platter, and you can slice it right on here. That wraps up another episode of Tammy's Kitchen. I hope you've enjoyed our old-fashioned country supper. This meatloaf and mashed potatoes sure looks good, and I can't wait to try a no-bake cookie. So thanks for joining us, and if you'd like to have any of the recipes on today's show, please email us at recipes@SheratonValley.com. We'll see you around the valley.